These were scenes from Bangladesh after Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina fled the country, following weeks of student-led protests spilling over the streets. The protests began over the controversial quota system in which 30% of government jobs were reserved for the descendants of freedom fighters who helped Bangladesh gain independence from Pakistan in the year 1971. Students wanted this quota to be scrapped as they found it discriminatory. But despite the widespread protests, Sheikh Hasina refused to meet their demands. The protest soon turned violent, killing hundreds of people. What aggravated the protest was when Sheikh Hasina labelled the protesters as razakars, which means traitors.
তার মানে কি মুক্তিযোদ্ধার সন্তান নাতিপুতিরা কেউ মেধাবী না, যত রাজাকারের বাচ্চারা নাতিপুতি হলো মেধাবী, তাই না?
এই দেশের জনগণকে যদি তারা ঠান্ডা না করতে পারে, এটা গরম হইতে থাকবে, হইতে থাকবে, হইতে থাকবে।
The quota system was introduced by Sheikh Hasina's father and the then Prime Minister Sheikh Mujibur Rahman in 1972. Under this, 56% of government jobs were reserved for candidates from various quotas. 30% jobs were reserved for freedom fighters and their descendants, 10% for women, another 10% for Zila quota for backward districts, 5% for ethnic minorities, and 1% quota for people with disabilities. This quota system went on until 2018, when students carried out massive protests across Bangladesh. They questioned the government's decision as to why the benefits were being extended to the grandchildren of freedom fighters. Calling it discriminatory, they wanted it to be replaced with a merit-based system. In response to the protest, Sheikh Hasina's government abolished the quota system. So since 2018, there was no quota system until a group of petitioners went to the High Court in 2021 and fought to restore the 30% reservation for freedom fighters. 3 years later, the protest revived in the country. The High Court reinstated the quota system, after which students from various universities in Dhaka took to the streets and demanded an end to a quota system for government jobs against the court ruling.
কিন্তু সেখানে অবশ্যই মুক্তিযুদ্ধ অগ্রাধিকার পাবে, এটা তো দিতেই হবে। এখন
The situation escalated and turned violent as student protesters clashed with security officials and pro-government activists. To control the situation, the government deployed tear gas, rubber bullets to control the crowds. They shut down educational institutes, imposed a curfew with a shoot-on-sight order, and also cut off internet access. The violent situation cost over 200 lives, and thousands of people were injured in the movement in July 2024. Around 10,000 students were detained by the security forces. The Supreme Court decided to reduce the veterans quota from 30% to 5% and gave 2% quota for ethnic minorities, transgender and disabled people, which means 93% of jobs will be allocated on merit. The government accepted the decision and restored the internet, hoping this would end the protest. But the protest didn't stop. The students' demands were clear. They sought a public apology from Sheikh Hasina for the deaths, removal of several of her ministers who were involved in the crackdown, and the release of all the students arrested and jailed. The protests had spread across several parts of the country, and the angry protesters demanded Sheikh Hasina's resignation.
এটা ভুল হইতেই পারে, কিন্তু ভুল যখন হয়, ভুলটা রিয়েলাইজ করার পর ক্ষমা চেয়ে নিলে মানুষ ঠান্ডা হয়।
Thousands of students clashed with government supporters. At least 98 people, including students and police officers, lost their lives in the violence, bringing the death toll to over 300 since the protests erupted. The government imposed a curfew to control the law and order situation. After that, the anti-discrimination student movement, which was organizing the protests, called for a march to Dhaka to force the government out. They called it the final battle. The government then shut down mobile internet services and restricted social media platforms as the march to Dhaka was expected to be more intense.
আমাদেরকে দমিয়ে রাখার সাধ্য কারণ নাই। আমরা যদি একবার রুখে দাঁড়াই, আমরা ইনশাআল্লাহ বাংলাদেশের স্বাধীন করেই ছাড়ব।
Amid ongoing violent protests in the country, Sheikh Hasina resigned from her post and left the country. After she left, hundreds of protesters stormed her official residence. People were also seen smashing a statue of Hasina's father, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and some of them were even seen raiding the parliament in Dhaka. Amid all the chaos, the country's army chief Waqar-uz-Zaman addressed the nation and announced that an interim government will be formed.
প্রতিটা হত্যার বিচার করা হবে, প্রতিটা অন্যায়ের বিচার হবে।
Hasina had landed in India at the Hinton Air Base after resigning from her post amid violent protests.